Sometimes when I start to talk about binders, I throw myself off a little bit because I remember back in the day when Mitt Romney had his binders full of women and I couldn't talk about a basic fact of my trans existence without some people mostly like genuinely not understanding that I'm referring to a trans thing and not Mitt Romney's binders full of women. Like some of them genuinely not understanding and some of them deliberately making the joke. So sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to talk about binders today. And then I'm like, all these like traumatic flashbacks to stupid Mitt Romney jokes. Anyway, I'm starting to feel old. I'm starting to get old politically. Anyway, chest binders. Trans men wear them if they haven't yet had top surgery or if they don't want top surgery. Other people who have boobs and want them to be temporarily concealed do that also, sometimes for cosplay, a lot of times for gender affirmation. I myself am a person who spent many years binding. I don't do it anymore mostly because I don't go anywhere where I need to do that. And also because I don't care anymore. Try me. I don't want to be uncomfortable physically. I don't care about getting misgendered anymore. So they're useful tools in the sense that there is a lot of emotional distress and annoyance wrapped up in getting misgendered all the goddamn time. And if putting on a chest binder to flatten that out can make it easier for you to navigate through society, well, then there you go. It makes your life easier, prevents conflict potentially between people. It's a good thing. So Mermaids is a ding-old-dangle charity over in the UK who they basically just like provide trans kids with like someone to talk to. They provide them with like information about various aspects of like medical care. Like here's what you will need to do if you want to pursue medical treatment or whatever. And we are seeing some conflict here. This is my friend Hyde. There are claims that Mermaids is giving teenagers as young as 13 or 14 chest binders, even behind parents' backs, for the same reason that other services give them free condoms, contraceptive pills, and abortions. Like, I agree with Hyde's point here. I want to return to it in a second. So here's the claims being made. This post was from The Telegraph saying, trans charity Mermaids giving breast binders to children, quote, massive safeguarding red flags over the taxpayer-funded group led to calls for an immediate investigation. Maya Forstater again saying, trans charity Mermaids giving breast binders to children behind parents' backs. This is not okay. The organization should not be in schools. They should be investigated by the Charity Commission. And then this post says, Telegraph uncovers shocking evidence that Mermaids is sending out breast binders against parents' wishes. They praised a child for, quote, deciding that they were transgender by the age of 13 and deciding they wanted drugs and, quote, all the surgeries. I don't know what the hell that second part is about. That's like, there's two separate things here. I'm sick of reading about organizations like Mermaids making decisions, ones which ride roughshod over child well-being and protection behind the backs of parents. These are not your children. These decisions are not yours to make. There needs to be an inquiry into this now. Now there needs to be an inquiry into this. So I agree with Hyde here on the whole like, oh, behind parents' backs thing. Like, here's the thing. I'm a 28-year-old person, right? But inside me is like an asshole teenager. Truly, I was kind of an asshole teenager. Here's the thing. But now I'm an asshole teenager with fucking money. So sometimes, I'll be in clothing swap groups or whatever. Like, this was more common when I was younger because I don't really participate in the kind of communities where we're talking about binding so much anymore. But when I was in those kind of groups, I'd see someone who was like, I'm 16 and my mom would absolutely freak out if I got a binder, and like, especially, and then I see them like workshopping with people how to get one. And I'm like just filled with a blind fucking rage. And I'm like, do you have a friend who can receive the package at their house? Like, I'm going to buy this for you. I'm like going to buy you a binder and send it directly to whatever the easiest address for you to pick it up at is, because fuck parents and like fuck parents who want to like prevent their kids from being able to exercise basic bodily autonomy. That shit drives me absolutely insane. And here's the thing also, chest binders, like when you go to buy one that's specifically for this purpose, you know, you go to buy a binder from GC2B or some other recognizable brand that does like specific shapewear. I mean, really, fundamentally, at the end of the day, a binder is just shapewear. It's like wearing Spanx, okay? Or like a girdle or a corset. You know, like it's shapewear. It's underwear that shapes you. It's fine. They're specifically designed with no elastic in them, and they're specifically designed to be worn for a specific length of time. They come with warning labels that say like, you shouldn't wear this for longer than 8 hours. You shouldn't wear it while you exercise. You shouldn't wear it when you go swimming. You shouldn't try to put it on when it's wet or anything like that. You know, they come with all these like caveats and stuff because there is such a thing as doing this unsafely. There is such a thing as binding unsafely. Now, the binders that have been engineered specifically for this purpose cost a little bit of money because like otherwise what these teenagers are going to be doing is they're going to be using ace bandages. They're going to be using duct tape or plastic wrap, like things that are actually going to hurt them. You know, the binder is like safe if it's used correctly, you know, if it's the correct size, not worn for too long, etc., etc. People are concerned about the health risks involved with binding, right? Here's like the health risks involved with binding are like, it can make it like to where your breathing requires more muscular, like it, so you can have a little bit of chest pain because your muscles are working harder. That's like not necessarily a bad thing. Your breathing is slightly restricted while you're wearing it. You can't like necessarily take as deep of a breath, which is normal. That's why you're not meant to exercise with it on, right? And it can, to some extent, it can damage the elasticity of your skin. Mostly because like the binder has a tendency to create like a uniboob thing if you like are wearing it correctly. So what people do is like they wear it incorrectly and they like pull their boobs way out to the side and stuff because that makes it flatter. But it also is like means that their skin is being constantly pulled on. So the skin that is being constantly pulled is going to become damaged over time just by being stretched constantly, you know? So those are like the kind of risks of binding. Whereas if you don't provide kids with the ability to do it safely, they're going to just use whatever they have to hand. Like they're going to use ace bandages. And if they wrap themselves with an ace bandage, guess what? They're probably going to break their ribs. Same thing with the duct tape. Or the duct tape could also like rip off their skin is another thing. Like rip off the other upper layers of skin and like cause abrasion and bleeding. But yeah, the main difference between wearing a binder and a kid doing it on their own anyway, like here's what you have to understand about dumb teenagers, okay? Is that they're going to do unsafe things. Like the reason why Hyde here made this comparison between services giving free condoms, contraceptive pills, and abortions is because kids are going to do those things unsafely anyway. The reason why you equip teenagers with this knowledge is because they're going to do the thing anyway. Like, they're horny, they're going to have sex, okay? So if they're horny and they're going to have sex, then you need to teach them how to do that safely. You need to give them condoms. You need to put them on birth control if that's necessary. Like, you need to teach them how to use condoms correctly, additionally. And, like, teach them about all of the different risks. Like, teach them about risks about oral sex. And like the way that you can spread STIs that way as well. You know, you need to equip them to do it safely because they're going to motherfucking do it anyway. Okay. Same thing here with the binding is that a transgender teenager who's dealing with these things about their body are like going to do things that are potentially unsafe, even if they know it's potentially unsafe because they don't have access. You know, they might be like, oh, I read that it's not safe to use an ace bandage, but my mom would never let me get a binder, so I'm going to use what I have to hand anyway. And then they fucking break their rib because they were binding unsafely because you thought that they just didn't deserve access because mommy said no. Like, it is historically a feminist view that teenagers have the right to make informed choices about their own bodies. Frequently, the medical age of consent is less than the age of majority, you know? Like, many states allow teens to decide to get vaccinated without parental permission. Like, not every place requires you to get permission for abortion, if you're underage, you know, like medical procedures are considered to be kind of different to like getting a tattoo, you know, like you can't consent to getting a tattoo when you're underage and everything. Yeah. So the key is educating everyone how to do this safely. Trans women have a similar problem with using tape for binding bottom parts. Yeah. There are clothing called gaffs that can be used for flattening out bottom parts, and conservatives hate gaffs, especially from it being made more well-known from drag shows. Yeah, I know, like, people use duct tape on their genitals, and, like, you also have to, like, really shave very thoroughly in order to use tape without hurting yourself. Like, tucking, I will say, when we were going over the WPATH guidelines, they said in the tucking section that there had been no specific study on whether tucking was healthy or not for you. But to my understanding, like, the worst it could do is like lower your sperm count because your testes are too close to your body and they're too warm, you know. But I don't know medically like what the actual limitations on that are. But yes, people will choose to do unsafe things if you don't equip them to do it safely. Like, you should not be subjecting these teens to, like, basically abusive tactics. This is the thing about these goddamn TERFs, is truly, like, at the end of the day, they believe that parents should be able to abuse their children out of being trans. You don't own your children and your kids' gender and sexuality. That's true. Yeah. It's like, these people just truly believe that they have the right to literally abuse their children. Like it's like I don't think that they've been informed that restricting access to your children's friends, like denying them privacy, any of those things, like, that's just straight up abusive. Like, taking the door off of your kid's bedroom is abusive. Stalking all of their internet activity is abusive. You can't do that to people. And yeah, like, these people just truly believe that parents have the right to constantly monitor their children, to put them through, like, psychologically damaging things, and that if you try to help those children, then you are a groomer, basically. At the end of the day, you're a groomer for trying to provide children with help, with support. Like, do we not remember Leela Alcorn? I'm sorry, I don't want to get on a whole, like, leaving my dead children at your fucking door thing, but, like, Leela Alcorn killed herself when she was 17 years old because her parents did this to her, where they isolated her. They prevented her from talking to her friends or leaving the house. Like, they buried her in a suit. And then when too many trans people kept visiting her grave, they had her exhumed and cremated so that people couldn't visit her grave anymore. So it's hard for me not to end up there. I don't want to like linger on it too long here, but that's why it matters, because these kids will kill themselves. This is abuse if you don't allow the children to have access to very basic things like shapewear. Shapewear, not a big deal. Calm the fuck down. The parents should be grateful the teen is simply binding and such. Listen, here's the other thing too. Sometimes these kids do try to self-mutilate them. They do try to just cut their body parts off in like very extreme psychiatric situations. You know, that's the other thing too. Like, they might try to hurt themselves in a number of different ways. They might kill themselves. Like, it's not cool. You cannot do this to people. Thank you so much to all of my supporters, especially my patrons, and especially these ones. We have Tiago Nascimento, Mersh Rolvag, Brandon, Jovian F. Gaudreau, Bean, Heather Clarkson, Amanda B., R. Halverson, Michelle Winter, Athiette, Sarah A., Decoy Duck, Wellington Marcus, Suzanne Maynard, Nova, Sojo, Mr. Atheist, and Elizabeth Bartell.